A silent boy gave his dog a secret signal in court. What happened next shocked the judge. Your Honor, the witness has not spoken a single word in 7 months. Attorney Sarah Chen's voice echoed through the hushed courtroom as she gestured toward the small figure hunched in the witness chair. But we believe he can still identify the man who murdered his mother. If this incredible story of courage and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog moves, you please like and subscribe for more amazing tales that will restore your faith in the power of healing. 8-year-old Noah Winters sat frozen in the witness chair, his small hands buried in the golden fur of the therapy dog beside him. The courtroom was silent except for the soft panting of Max, a specially trained golden retriever who had become Noah's only means of communication with the outside world since that terrible night 7 months ago. Judge Margaret Foster had seen many difficult cases in her 23 years on the bench, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The prosecution's entire case against Victor Harmon, the man accused of brutally murdering Noah's mother during a home invasion, rested on the testimony of a child who had been shocked into complete silence by the trauma of witnessing the crime. Noah, Dr. Michael Reeves said gently, kneeling beside the boy and his canine companion. Remember what we practiced. Max is here to help you. You don't have to say anything out loud. The boy's dark eyes, hollow with grief and terror, flicked toward the defendant's table, where Victor Harmon sat with his defense attorney. Harmon was a large man with cold eyes and scarred hands, and when Noah's gaze fell on him, the child's entire body began to tremble. Max immediately sensed his young partner's distress. The golden retriever pressed closer to Noah, his warm body providing a barrier between the boy and the courtroom full of strangers. But it was what happened next that would change everything. Noah's right hand, hidden beneath Max's thick coat, made a subtle gesture. 3 quick taps followed by a gentle pull on the dog's ear. It was a signal that Dr. Reeves had never seen before, something Noah had apparently developed on his own during their months of therapy together. Max's response was immediate and unmistakable. The therapy dog turned his head toward the defendant's table, fixed his gaze directly on Victor Harmon, and let out a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. The courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps, but Judge Foster's attention was focused entirely on the boy and his dog, and on the look of pure terror that had just crossed Victor Harmon's face. Noah Winters had been a normal, happy 8-year-old until the night that shattered his world and stole his voice. He lived with his mother, Rebecca, in a modest apartment in Portland, Oregon, where she worked as a night shift nurse at the local hospital. Rebecca was a single mother who had devoted her life to caring for others, both at work and at home, raising Noah with a combination of fierce love and gentle discipline that had produced a bright, curious child who loved books, animals, and making his mother laugh. The night of March 15th had started like any other. Rebecca had returned home from her shift at 3 a.m., exhausted but looking forward to the weekend she would spend with Noah. She had been making herself a cup of tea when Victor Harmon broke down their apartment door, high on methamphetamine, and looking for money to feed his addiction. Harmon was a career criminal with a long history of violence, but this was supposed to be a simple burglary. He had watched the apartment building for weeks, noting the patterns of its residents, and had chosen Rebecca's unit because he believed it would be empty during her work hours. He hadn't counted on her early return, and he certainly hadn't expected to find a child hiding in the bedroom closet watching through a crack in the door, as he beat Rebecca to death with a baseball bat when she tried to call for help. Noah had witnessed every horrific moment of his mother's murder, had seen the blood, had heard her final words as she begged Harmon to spare her son. The trauma had been so severe that when police found Noah 6 hours later, still hiding in the closet beside his mother's body, he had retreated so far into himself that he couldn't speak, couldn't cry, couldn't even acknowledge the presence of the officers who were trying to help him. The months that followed had been a nightmare of foster care therapy sessions and legal proceedings. Noah had been placed with his Aunt Lisa, his mother's sister, who loved him but struggled to connect with a child who had become a ghost in his own life. Traditional therapy had failed completely. Noah wouldn't speak to psychologists, wouldn't engage with play therapy, wouldn't even make eye contact with the adults who were trying to help him heal. That's when Dr. Michael Reeves entered the picture. Dr. Reeves was a child psychologist who specialized in trauma cases, but his approach was unconventional. He believed that sometimes the traditional methods of therapy weren't enough that some children needed something more fundamental than words to begin their healing journey. He had been working with therapy animals for over a decade, pairing traumatized children with specially trained dogs who could provide the kind of unconditional love and acceptance that human beings sometimes couldn't offer. Max was Dr. Reeves's most successful therapy dog, a 4-year-old golden retriever who had been trained from puppyhood to work with children who had experienced severe trauma. Max had an almost supernatural ability to sense a child's emotional state and respond accordingly, providing comfort during panic attacks, companionship during nightmares, and a sense of safety that allowed healing to begin. The legal system had been skeptical of Dr. Reeves's request to use Max in Noah's testimony. Animal-assisted therapy was still relatively new, and the idea of allowing a dog in a criminal courtroom was unprecedented in Oregon. But District Attorney Patricia Williams knew that without Noah's testimony, Victor Harmon would walk free, and she was willing to try anything that might help the boy find his voice. The breakthrough in Noah's case came during his 4th session with Dr. Reeves and Max 3 months after his mother's murder. Until that point, Noah had shown no interest in the therapy dog, barely acknowledging Max's presence even when the golden retriever lay beside him during their sessions. But something changed that day, something that Dr. Reeves would later describe as magical. Noah had been sitting in his usual spot on the floor of Dr. Reeves's office, staring at nothing when Max approached him with a tennis ball in his mouth. The dog had dropped the ball at Noah's feet and sat back on his haunches, tail wagging hopefully. For the first time in months, Noah had looked directly at something other than the floor. "He wants to play with you," Dr. Reeves had said gently. "You don't have to talk to him. Just throw the ball if you want to." Noah had picked up the ball and thrown it across the room. Max had bounded after it, joyfully returning it to Noah, with the kind of enthusiasm that only a golden retriever could muster. For the next hour, boy and dog had played together in complete silence, but it was the first time since the murder that Noah had engaged with the world around him. Over the following weeks, Noah and Max had developed their own language. Noah would touch Max in different ways to communicate his needs. A pat on the head meant he was okay. A scratch behind the ears meant he was sad. A gentle tug on the tail meant he was scared. Max seemed to understand perfectly, responding to each signal with appropriate comfort and support. Dr. Reeves had been documenting these interactions, fascinated by the unique bond that was developing between his patient and his therapy dog. But it wasn't until Noah began using Max to communicate about the night of his mother's murder that the true significance of their relationship became clear. The first breakthrough came when Dr. Reeves showed Noah a series of photographs from the crime scene, sanitized images that showed the apartment, but not the violence that had occurred there. Noah had immediately become agitated, his breathing rapid and shallow, his hands shaking. But instead of withdrawing completely as he had done in previous sessions, Noah had placed his hand on Max's back and made a specific gesture, a circular motion with his index finger. Max had responded by moving to the corner of the room and lying down with his back to Noah, a position that Dr. Reeves recognized as the dog's way of providing protection and creating a safe space. Noah had followed Max to the corner and curled up against the dog's warm body, finding the comfort he needed to continue looking at the photographs. "He's using Max as a buffer," Dr. Reeves had explained to District Attorney Williams during their meeting to discuss Noah's potential testimony. "The dog gives him the emotional support he needs to confront his trauma. It's remarkable. I've never seen anything quite like it." The district attorney had been skeptical. "Dr. Reeves, I understand that this dog has been helpful in Noah's therapy, but we're talking about a criminal trial. The defense will argue that the dog's presence is prejudicial, that it's designed to manipulate the jury's emotions." "With respect, Ms. Williams, Noah's emotions are the evidence. His trauma, his fear, his recognition of the defendant, that's what will convict Victor Harmon. Max doesn't change Noah's testimony. He makes it possible." The legal battle to allow Max in the courtroom had taken 2 months, with defense attorneys arguing that the dog's presence would be prejudicial and prosecution experts testifying about the therapeutic value of animal-assisted testimony. In the end, Judge Foster had made the unprecedented decision to allow Max to accompany Noah to the witness stand with strict guidelines about how the dog could be used during testimony. The first major challenge came during the pretrial preparation sessions when Dr. Reeves attempted to help Noah practice identifying Victor Harmon using photographs and police lineup procedures. Traditional identification methods had failed completely. Noah would become catatonic when shown pictures of the defendant, his trauma response so severe that he would sometimes vomit or have panic attacks. But with Max by his side, Noah began to develop a sophisticated system of nonverbal communication that allowed him to convey complex information about the night of his mother's murder. Dr. Reeves documented dozens of different signals that Noah used with Max, each one corresponding to a different aspect of his testimony. He's created his own language, Dr. Reeves explained to the prosecution team during one of their preparation sessions. A gentle touch on Max's left ear means yes. A touch on the right ear means no. Hakram. When he wants to indicate fear or danger, he places both hands on Max's back and presses down slightly. When he recognizes something or someone, he makes a specific gesture with his right hand. 3 quick taps, followed by pulling on Max's ear. District Attorney Williams watched in amazement as Noah used these signals to answer questions about the crime. When shown a photograph of the baseball bat used to kill his mother, Noah had immediately placed both hands on Max's back and pressed down his signal for danger. When asked if he had seen the person who hurt his mother, Noah had touched Max's left ear. Yes. But the most crucial test came when they showed Noah a police lineup that included Victor Harmon. Noah had studied the photographs for several minutes, his small face tense with concentration and fear. Then, without warning, he had made the recognition signal. 3 quick taps followed by pulling on Max's ear while pointing at Harmon's photograph. Max's response had been immediate and startling. The therapy dog, who was normally calm and controlled in all situations, had suddenly become agitated, his hackles rising as he stared at Harmon's photograph. It was as if the dog was picking up on Noah's emotional state and reflecting it back, providing a visible representation of the boy's internal trauma. "That's our guy," Williams had said quietly. "Noah recognizes him, and somehow the dog knows it too." But the defense team was not going to make it easy. Victor Harmon's attorney, James Crawford, was a skilled criminal defense lawyer who specialized in discrediting prosecution witnesses. He had already filed multiple motions to exclude Noah's testimony, arguing that a child who couldn't speak couldn't be considered a reliable witness. Your Honor, Crawford had argued during one pretrial hearing, the prosecution is asking this court to accept the testimony of a traumatized child who communicates through a dog. This is not evidence. This is emotional manipulation designed to prejudice the jury against my client. Judge Foster had been torn. She understood the defense's concerns about the unusual nature of Noah's testimony, but she also recognized that the boy was the only witness to his mother's murder. "Mr. Crawford, are you suggesting that trauma victims should be denied the right to testify simply because their trauma has affected their ability to communicate in traditional ways?" "I'm suggesting that we need reliable evidence, not interpretations of a child's interactions with an animal. How can we be sure that this dog is actually responding to the child's signals and not to cues from the therapist or prosecutor?" The question had led to extensive testing and documentation of Noah and Max's communication system. Dr. Reeves had conducted dozens of controlled experiments demonstrating that Max responded consistently to Noah's signals, even when other adults in the room were unaware of what the boy was communicating. The breakthrough that convinced Judge Foster to allow the testimony came during a blind test conducted in her chambers. Noah had been shown a series of photographs while Dr. Reeves and the attorneys were in another room, unable to see what images the boy was viewing. Court personnel who were unfamiliar with Noah's signal system observed as the boy used his gestures to communicate with Max about what he was seeing. When Noah was shown a photograph of a baseball bat similar to the murder weapon, he had immediately given his danger signal, and Max had responded by moving to a protective position. When shown a picture of his mother, Noah had touched Max's left ear, his signal for yes or recognition, and the dog had gently nuzzled the boy's face in response. "The consistency is remarkable," Judge Foster had observed. "This child has developed a genuine communication system with this animal, and the dog's responses appeared to be authentic reactions to the boy's emotional state." The turning point in Noah's case came during an unexpected encounter that occurred 2 weeks before the trial was scheduled to begin. Dr. Reeves had been taking Noah and Max for a routine therapy walk in the park near the courthouse when they encountered Victor Harmon, who was out on bail and apparently unaware that his victim's son was in the area. Noah's reaction was immediate and devastating. The moment he saw Harmon walking toward them on the park path, the boy collapsed to his knees, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow as he went into a full panic attack. But instead of withdrawing completely as he had done in the past, Noah grabbed onto Max with both hands and made a signal that Dr. Reeves had never seen before. The boy's right hand moved in a complex pattern. First, the 3 quick taps that indicated recognition, then a new gesture where he gripped Max's collar and pointed directly at Harmon. Max's response was unlike anything Dr. Reeves had witnessed in years of working with therapy dogs. The golden retriever, normally gentle and calm in all situations, suddenly transformed into a protective guardian. Max positioned himself between Noah and Harmon, his body tense and alert, his eyes fixed on the man who had caused his young partner such trauma. When Harmon continued walking toward them, apparently unaware of who they were, Max let out a low warning growl that made the convicted criminal stop in his tracks. "Is there a problem here?" Harmon had asked, his voice carrying the kind of casual menace that had terrorized Noah on the night of his mother's murder. Dr. Reeves had quickly moved to shield Noah from Harmon's view, but the damage was already done. The boy was now pointing directly at Harmon while making his recognition signal, and Max was responding with an intensity that left no doubt about the dog's assessment of the situation. "We're fine," Dr. Reeves had said firmly. "We were just leaving." But as they walked away, Dr. Reeves realized that something fundamental had changed in Noah's relationship with his trauma. For the first time since his mother's murder, the boy had not only recognized his attacker, but had actively pointed him out, using Max as his voice to identify the man who had destroyed his life. That night, Noah had his first nightmare in weeks, but it was different from the terrors that had plagued him since the murder. Instead of being helpless and silent, Noah had fought back in his dream, using Max to protect himself and his mother. When he woke up, he had made a new signal to Max, a gentle pat on the dog's head followed by a hug, that Dr. Reeves interpreted as gratitude. "He's ready, Doctor," Reeves told District Attorney Williams the next morning. "Noah is ready to testify. The encounter with Harmon in the park was traumatic, but it also showed him that he's not powerless anymore. He has Max, and together they can face his attacker." The prosecution team began intensive preparation for Noah's testimony, working with Dr. Reeves to document every signal and response in the boy's communication system with Max. They practiced the courtroom procedures, familiarized Noah with the physical layout of the witness stand, and prepared him for the emotional challenge of facing Victor Harmon in a formal legal setting. But the defense team was also preparing, and they had discovered something that could potentially destroy the prosecution's case. James Crawford had hired his own expert witness, a veterinary behaviorist who specialized in animal psychology, to evaluate Max and Noah's communication system. Dr. Reeves Crawford had said during a pretrial deposition, "Isn't it possible that this dog is simply responding to environmental cues rather than to specific signals from the child? Dogs are highly sensitive to human emotions and body language. How can you be certain that Max is actually interpreting Noah's gestures rather than just reacting to the general emotional atmosphere?" The question had forced Dr. Reeves to conduct even more rigorous testing of Noah and Max's communication system, but the results had only strengthened his confidence in their bond. "Mr. Crawford, I've been working with therapy animals for over a decade, and I've never seen anything like the relationship between Noah and Max. This isn't just a trained response. It's genuine communication between two beings who have learned to understand each other on a level that transcends traditional language." The week before the trial, Noah's case took an unexpected turn when Victor Harmon's defense team filed a motion claiming that the boy's identification of their client was unreliable due to the traumatic nature of his experience. They brought in their own expert witness, Dr. Patricia Vance, a child psychologist who specialized in memory and trauma, to testify that Noah's recollections could not be trusted. Children who witness violent crimes often develop false memories or confabulate details, Dr. Vance testified during the pretrial hearing. The fact that this child has been unable to speak for 7 months suggests severe psychological damage that would compromise his ability to accurately recall events. Dr. Reeves found himself defending not only his therapeutic methods, but the entire concept of nonverbal testimony. "Your honor, trauma affects different children in different ways. Noah's silence doesn't indicate memory loss or confusion. It indicates a protective mechanism that his mind has created to cope with an unbearable experience. His ability to communicate through Max actually demonstrates that his memories are intact and accessible. The hearing became a battle between competing theories of trauma psychology, with each side presenting evidence about the reliability of child witnesses and the validity of animal-assisted therapy. Judge Foster found herself in the unprecedented position of having to decide whether a dog could serve as a legitimate intermediary for human testimony. Dr. Reeves, Judge Foster asked, how can this court be certain that Max is actually responding to Noah's signals rather than to subtle cues from you or other adults in the room? Your Honor, we've conducted extensive testing under controlled conditions. Noah's communication with Max is consistent, specific, and independent of any adult intervention. The dog responds to the child's emotional state and physical signals in ways that demonstrate genuine understanding. The defense team's expert had a different interpretation. Your Honor, dogs are highly trainable animals that can be conditioned to respond to almost any stimulus. Without being able to cross-examine the dog or verify his responses through traditional means, we're essentially asking the jury to accept the word of an animal. The breakthrough that saved Noah's testimony came from an unexpected source. Judge Foster's own court reporter, Maria Santos, had been documenting the proceedings when she noticed something that the attorneys had missed. During one of the demonstration sessions, Noah had made a signal to Max that resulted in the dog moving to a specific position in the courtroom. But what was remarkable was that Noah had made the same signal several times throughout the hearing, and Max had responded identically each time, even when the boy's gesture was so subtle that most adults in the room hadn't noticed it. Your Honor, Santos had said during a break in proceedings, I've been watching this child and his dog for hours, and there's something you need to see. The boy's signals are consistent to the point of being almost mechanical. He's not randomly gesturing, he's communicating specific information, and the dog is responding with precision. Judge Foster had asked for a demonstration, and what she witnessed convinced her that Noah and Max had developed a genuine communication system. When Noah was shown a photograph of his mother, he touched Max's left ear, and the dog gently nuzzled his face. When shown a picture of the murder weapon, Noah placed both hands on Max's back, and the dog immediately moved to a protective position. When shown Victor Harmon's photograph, Noah made his recognition signal, and Max's entire demeanor changed, becoming alert and focused on the image. The consistency and specificity of these interactions suggests genuine communication, Judge Foster ruled. This court will allow Noah Winters to testify with the assistance of his therapy dog, Max, under strict guidelines that ensure the integrity of his testimony. But the defense team had one more strategy to discredit Noah's testimony. They had discovered that Dr. Reeves had been treating Noah for 7 months, and they argued that the therapist had inadvertently influenced the boy's memories and responses through suggestion and conditioning. Dr. Reeves has been working with this child for months, Crawford argued. Isn't it possible that he has unconsciously shaped Noah's responses to support the prosecution's case? The boy has been repeatedly exposed to information about the crime, shown photographs of the defendant, and encouraged to remember details that might not be accurate. The accusation was serious enough to warrant a thorough investigation of Dr. Reeves's therapeutic methods and documentation. The court appointed an independent expert to review all of Noah's therapy sessions and evaluate whether there was any evidence of suggestion or manipulation. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a forensic child psychologist with no connection to either side of the case, spent 2 weeks reviewing Dr. Reeves's notes, video recordings of therapy sessions, and independent assessments of Noah's progress. Her report was comprehensive and ultimately supportive of the prosecution's case. There is no evidence that Dr. Reeves has influenced or manipulated Noah's memories, Dr. Mitchell concluded. The therapeutic relationship appears to have been conducted according to the highest professional standards, with careful attention to avoiding suggestion or leading questions. Noah's responses appear to be genuine expressions of his own experiences and emotions. The day before Noah's scheduled testimony, the case took a dramatic turn when Victor Harmon's defense team made a desperate attempt to have the charges dismissed. They filed an emergency motion claiming that the prosecution's reliance on a child's communication with a dog violated their client's constitutional right to confront his accuser. Your Honor, defense attorney Crawford argued, the Sixth Amendment guarantees my client the right to face his accuser and cross-examine witnesses against him. How can we cross-examine a dog? How can we challenge testimony that is delivered through an animal intermediary? The legal argument was complex and unprecedented. District Attorney Williams found herself defending not only Noah's right to testify, but the broader principle that trauma victims should not be denied justice simply because their trauma had affected their ability to communicate in traditional ways. Your Honor, Noah Winters is the accuser, not his dog. Max is simply a therapeutic tool that allows Noah to communicate his testimony. The defense has the right to cross-examine Noah to challenge his recollections and to present their own evidence. The fact that Noah communicates non-verbally doesn't change the fundamental nature of his testimony. Judge Foster was clearly struggling with the unprecedented nature of the case. Ms. Williams, I understand your argument, but Mr. Crawford raises valid concerns about due process. How can the defense effectively challenge testimony that is delivered through signals that most people can't interpret? The solution came from Dr. Reeves, who proposed that he serve as an interpreter during Noah's testimony, translating the boy's signals for the court while remaining neutral about their content. Your Honor, I can explain what Noah is communicating without interpreting the meaning of his communications. The jury can then decide for themselves what weight to give to his testimony. The proposal was acceptable to both sides, but it required extensive preparation to ensure that Dr. Reeves could serve as an objective interpreter. The court appointed its own expert to observe the process and verify that the translation was accurate and unbiased. The final test came during a practice session held in Judge Foster's chambers the day before the trial. Noah, Max, and Dr. Reeves were brought into the courtroom to demonstrate how the testimony would work with attorneys from both sides observing and asking questions. Noah was shown a series of photographs including images of his mother, the crime scene, and several lineup photos that included Victor Harmon. His responses were consistent with all previous testing. He recognized his mother with a gentle touch to Max's left ear, showed fear and distress when viewing crime scene photos, by placing both hands on Max's back, and made his recognition signal when shown Harmon's photograph. But it was Max's response to Harmon's photo that provided the most compelling evidence. The therapy dog, who had remained calm and supportive throughout the session, suddenly became alert and protective when Noah made his recognition signal while looking at the defendant's image. Max's hackles rose, his body tensed, and he positioned himself between Noah and the photograph in a way that clearly demonstrated his assessment of the threat. The dog's response is remarkable, observed the court-appointed expert. He's not just responding to Noah's signal, he's reflecting the boy's emotional state in a way that provides additional context for the testimony. Defense attorney Crawford made one final attempt to exclude the testimony. Your Honor, this is unprecedented and potentially prejudicial. The jury will be influenced by the dog's reactions in ways that have nothing to do with the actual evidence. Judge Foster's response was definitive. Mr. Crawford, this court has thoroughly evaluated the proposed testimony and found it to be reliable, consistent, and probative. Noah Winters has the right to testify about what he witnessed, and Max provides him with the support he needs to do so. The testimony will be allowed, and the jury will be properly instructed about how to evaluate it. The morning of Noah's testimony, the courtroom was packed with spectators, media representatives, and legal observers who had come to witness this unprecedented moment in judicial history. Noah entered the courtroom holding tightly to Max's leash, his small face pale but determined as Dr. Reeves guided them to the witness stand. Judge Foster had made special arrangements for the testimony, allowing Max to sit beside Noah's chair and permitting Dr. Reeves to stand nearby to interpret the boy's signals. The atmosphere was tense but respectful, with everyone understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary. District Attorney Williams began her direct examination, gently asking Noah simple questions about his life with his mother and their routine before the night of the murder. Noah responded using his established signals, with Max touching the dog's left ear for yes and right ear for no, while Dr. Reeves translated for the court. Noah, did you love your mother very much? Williams asked. Noah immediately touched Max's left ear, and the therapy dog responded by gently nuzzling the boy's hand. Yes, Dr. Reeves interpreted. Were you at home with your mother on the night of March 15th? Again, Noah touched Max's left ear. Yes. The questioning continued for nearly an hour with Noah using his communication system to describe the events leading up to his mother's murder. When Williams showed him photographs of the crime scene, Noah's distress was visible as he placed both hands on Max's back, and the dog immediately moved to a protective position. But the crucial moment came when Williams asked Noah to identify the person who had hurt his mother. The prosecutor had prepared a photo array that included Victor Harmon, along with 5 other men of similar age and appearance. Noah studied the photographs carefully, his small hands resting on Max's back as he examined each face. When his eyes fell on Harmon's image, his entire body tensed, and he made the recognition signal that Dr. Reeves had documented dozens of times. 3 quick taps followed by pulling on Max's ear. Max's response was immediate and unmistakable. The therapy dog turned his head toward the defendant's table, fixed his gaze directly on Victor Harmon, and let out the same low protective growl that had shocked the courtroom during the preliminary hearing. He's identifying the defendant. Dr. Reeves translated his voice steady, despite the emotional weight of the moment. But it was what happened next that stunned everyone in the courtroom. As Noah continued to stare at Victor Harmon, the boy suddenly stood up from his chair, still holding onto Max's collar, and made a gesture that no one had ever seen before. He pointed directly at Harmon with his free hand, while making a new signal with his other hand, a clenched fist that he pressed against Max's side. The therapy dog's reaction was extraordinary. Max rose to his feet, positioned himself protectively in front of Noah, and stared directly at Victor Harmon with an intensity that made the defendant visibly uncomfortable. And then for the first time in 7 months, Noah Winters spoke. Him, the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper, but audible throughout the silent courtroom. He killed my mommy. The impact of Noah's single spoken word was immediate and devastating to the defense case. Victor Harmon, who had maintained his composure throughout months of legal proceedings, suddenly jumped to his feet and began shouting at the boy. You little liar! Harmon screamed, his mask of innocence finally slipping to reveal the violent criminal beneath. You don't know what you're talking about. You were supposed to be asleep. The outburst was exactly the confirmation that the prosecution needed. Harmon's words revealed knowledge of the crime that only the perpetrator could have possessed, specifically his expectation that Noah would have been asleep during the attack. Defense attorney Crawford desperately tried to control his client, but the damage was done. Harmon's violent reaction to Noah's testimony, combined with his inadvertent admission of guilt, had destroyed any chance of acquittal. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, burglary, and assault. Victor Harmon was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, bringing justice for Rebecca Winters and closure for her son. But the impact of Noah's testimony extended far beyond a single criminal case. The success of his animal-assisted testimony sparked a revolution in how the legal system approached cases involving traumatized child witnesses. Courts across the country began implementing programs that allowed therapy animals to support young victims during their testimony. Dr. Reeves found himself at the center of a national movement to expand the use of animal-assisted therapy in legal proceedings. He established a training program for therapy dogs and their handlers, creating standards and protocols that ensured the integrity of animal-assisted testimony while protecting the rights of both victims and defendants. Noah's recovery was gradual but remarkable. With Victor Harmon behind bars and justice served for his mother's murder, the boy slowly began to speak again. Max remained his constant companion throughout the healing process, providing the emotional support that allowed Noah to rebuild his life. Judge Foster became a national advocate for innovative approaches to victim testimony, speaking at legal conferences, and working with legislators to create laws that protected the rights of traumatized witnesses. The Noah's Law that she helped draft became a model for other states seeking to balance the needs of vulnerable victims with the constitutional rights of defendants. The case also had a profound impact on the therapy dog community. Max became something of a celebrity, but more importantly, he became the prototype for a new generation of specially trained dogs who could work with traumatized children in legal settings. The program that Dr. Reeves developed expanded to include dozens of therapy dogs working in courts across the country. Noah and Max's story became a symbol of hope for trauma survivors everywhere, proving that healing was possible even after the most devastating experiences. Their bond demonstrated the power of the human-animal connection to bridge the gap between trauma and recovery, between silence and voice, between despair and justice. Years later, Noah would grow up to become a victim's advocate, working with other children who had experienced trauma and helping them find their own voices. Max remained his partner throughout his childhood and adolescence, a constant reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was always hope for healing and justice. The courtroom where Noah found his voice became a place of pilgrimage for legal professionals and trauma survivors alike, a testament to the power of innovation, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog to transform not just individual lives, but an entire system of justice.